Welcome to Baldur's Gate 3, a RPG based off tabletop D&D, and Caitlyn is a character from the show Arcane and the video game League of Legends. In today's video, I will be answering the question, can you beat Baldur's Gate 3 as Caitlyn from Arcane? I got this idea when I saw the steampunk rifle mod because it reminded me of Caitlyn's gun from the show. Now before we begin, let's go over the rules. My main goal is to make my character look and play like Caitlyn. And except for the prologue, I'm only allowed to use companions if they are a temporary companion, such as Halsin. I also can create a custom character from the show if I need the extra help. I'm also using these custom settings for this run. Now that I've gone over the rules, let's begin. We first started in character creation. For race, I went for human. I selected fighter for the class and went for the defensive fighting style. I went with the noble background since Caitlyn was born into a wealthy family. For the ability points, I went with the default setup. Humans get an extra skill point, so I went for athletics, and for my other 2 points, I went with acrobatics and athletics again. For appearance, I tried my best to make her look similar to how she did in the show, and ended up with this look. Not too bad, but I'll make more changes later. With our character now created, let's get into the run. After waking on the Nautiloid, Caitlyn meets Lae'zel and fights some imps. After dealing with the imps, we walk past Shadowheart, enter this room, and retrieve the main weapon for this run, the Viper Carbine. After releasing Shadowheart from her pod, we enter the helm, and I get to use this weapon for the first time. We then deal with all the enemies, and then I am able to reach the transponder, and that ends the prologue. After waking up on the beach, I had leveled up, taking level 2 fighter, and I also have a mod on that gives you feet on every 2 levels for the default classes. So for my feet, I went with alert. I then wake up Shadowheart, send her back to camp, and I also changed armor. I then fought some intellect devourers and made my way to the Druid Grove where some goblins were trying to attack. I helped deal with the goblins, then headed inside of the grove. I ended up talking to Zevlor, and long story short, Zevlor and his people are being kicked out to fend for themselves. But if that were to happen, they would die because of the goblins in the area. So he asked for Caitlyn to talk to the leader of the grove. Before heading there, I had leveled up again, and for the fighter subclass, I went with Sharpshooter. If you haven't noticed by now, I have a lot of mods on, and I also have a double XP mod on, and paired with that, I have increased the max level from 12 to 20. So that's why I have the double XP mod on. I also have a bunch of other mods on, from appearance options to new gear to choose from, and also modded classes as well. I then headed over to talk to Kaga, and she demands that I help the tieflings before they are forced out of the grove. So I head towards the goblin camp to deal with the goblins and their leaders. Before I went to fight at the goblin camp, I had hit level 4, but first I went back to the camp to respec my skill points, and I made sure this time I selected archery as my fighting style. I went for the same amount of levels into fighter. I put all 4 in there, keeping the same choices as before, but for my level 4 feat, I accidentally chose Savage Attacker instead of Sharpshooter, which is actually what I meant to pick, but I fixed this later on as well. Now after I did that, I went to fight the Owlbear boss, and I died on my first try, but on my second try I was able to defeat them. After I dealt with the owlbears, I went to free Halsin. You may have noticed this construct in the fights, and after I had hit level 3, the gun can spawn an arcane cannon in fights to help me. And this thing can shoot, and it also shoots the same target that I will shoot if I'm in the radius of the cannon. Once those enemies were dealt with, I have Halsin help me with the goblin leaders. And I also hit level 5, giving me an extra attack. Mithara was first, and she didn't even get to attack me. I just pushed her off into this chasm. Raxlin was next, and this fight had a good amount of enemies in it. After dealing with most of them, Jor got a bit too close to Caitlyn, so I had the arcane cannon shoot him off into the spider pit, and I was able to finish him off, but for some reason I had Halsin jump into the pit too, and that boiled over into the priestess gut fight. Slowly but surely we took out a couple of goblins each round until priestess gut pulled me into this pit, and for some reason the next round she jumped into the pit. So I dealt with her the next round, and we eventually dealt with the rest of the enemies. With the growth saved and safe passage for the tieflings, I head towards the mountain pass and dealt with the Gigyanki that was in my way, and I was able to talk to this vendor for some new gear. I had also leveled up and I had multi-class into Ranger, choosing Ranger Knight and Urban Tracker, putting my proficiency point into Perception. I then moved on to the Underdark. I ran into the Bullet and dealt with him pretty quickly, then entered the Myconoid colony. I talked to the Sovereign Spa and was told to deal with the nearby enemy Dwagar in the area, so I went to deal with them and was able to surprise attack them and took them out in 2 rounds. I then took the boat towards the other side of the Underdark and ran into another group of Dwagar. I pushed this guy into the lake and dealt with the rest of the enemies. Once I finally made it to the Grymforge, I attacked the Dwagar here as well. Although I was outnumbered, I was able to deal with these guys pretty quickly without too much trouble. Before killing the last enemy, I shot open the area where Nir was trapped to start combat with him. I had my cannon hit him with anti-gravity and was able to finish him off pretty quickly after that. I leveled up again after this fight and I multi-classed into Mystic, going for Nomadic Arrow so I could ignore advantage and disadvantage with my ranged attack rolls. Before leaving, I went to fight Grim. I had my Arcane Cannon hit him with anti-gravity and I was able to deal with him before he was even able to move. With the Underdark dealt with, I was now ready for Act 2. But first I dealt with the Death Shepherds and Ghoul that were in my way, then I moved on to Act 2. Once I entered Act 2, I met up with some of the Absolute Cultists. I called in Karnis, then attacked them for the Moon Lantern. After dealing with them, I freed the pixie inside of the Moon Lantern and received protection from the Shadow Curse. I then worked my way to Moonrise Towers and leveled up while I was on the way there. I had put my next level into Ranger, and for my feat, I went with Ability Improvement, increasing my Dexterity. After reaching Moonrise Towers, I checked out the vendors, then headed off to the Gauntlet of Shar. I first had to fight some Justicar Knights that will spawn out of these portals. I did have some help from some skeletons, but I just end up having to fight these guys later because I have to kill their leader, Baldur, and also some extra enemies with them as well. After I dealt with Balthazar and his minions, I leveled up and I went for level 3 Ranger, choosing Lone Strider for my spell and Gloomstalker for my subclass. I moved on to the Trials of Shar, starting with the Soft Step Trial, where after completing it, I received one of 4 Umbral Gems. I then moved on to the self-same trial where you have to fight a copy of yourself. I went invisible to get a surprise attack, and after defeating my copy, I received the 2nd gem. I went on to completing the Faith Leap trial for the 3rd gem, and for the last gem I ended up fighting a group of enemies guarding it. And once I collected the last gem, I headed towards this pedestal. Putting the 1st gem in, I was able to get to the lower levels. Then I put the last 3 gems in to open a door and entered the Shadowfell. After entering the Shadowfell, I freed the Night Song, and now it was time to attack Moonrise Towers. The main floor had a lot of enemies to deal with, and by the end of it, all my allies were basically dead. Once I made it to the roof, I was able to deal with some of the enemies and got Ketheric's health low. After getting his health low, a cutscene will play and a giant tentacle came out of the ground and it knocked out Dame Aelin and Ketheric retreated. So once that happened, I dealt with the rest of the enemies, and then after that fight, I leveled up to level 10. I went for a level 4 ranger, and for my feat, I chose tough, which increases my health. I then entered the hole where the tentacle came out, and eventually found Ketheric. I first started this fight by freeing Dame Caitlyn, then dealing with most of the extra enemies. After dealing with most of the enemies, I started to attack Ketheric. Once I defeated him, it was now time for second phase of the boss fight against Merkel. Now Merkel has a legendary action called Gaze of the Dead that he will use on the first person that attacks him on each round. So to avoid this, I had my arcane cannon construct attack him first each round, and also he was resistant to piercing damage, which is not good at all for me since that's the damage type that I use for my weapon. He also kept spawning necromites, but now I'll let you guys see the rest of the fight for yourself. With Merkel defeated, it was now time to move on to Act 3. Before Act 3, Caitlyn help is called upon by the prism, so we entered a portal and rushed to help. It was then revealed that the person inside of the prism is a mind flayer. I ended up dealing with the Githyanki that was attacking, and then enter Act 3. After entering Act 3, I did a lot of wandering around until I entered the lower city of Baldur's Gate. In the lower city, I entered the Emperor's old hideout and ran into some Githyanki. There were a lot of enemies and they kept spawning out of these portals. It was a close fight, but I was able to deal with all the enemies. After that battle, I ran into Orin and she asked me to kill Lord Gortash. Now Orin and Lord Gortash are the last two bosses I need to fight in order to fight the Netherbrain, the last boss fight. I accepted since I already had planned on killing him, but before fighting him, I respect my build, and since I was now level 11 after that fight, I went for 11 levels into fighter. For my subclass, I went for champion, and I went for the exact same feats as before. Now level 11 fighter gets an improved extra attack, which let me now attack 3 times for each action point instead of 2. Now with my build ready, I went on to attack Gortash and I died twice. So I ended up getting some help by creating a character from the show, and I decided on making Stab, a side's character from season 2 of Arcane. He also fights alongside of Caitlyn, and I tried my best to make this character look like him, and this is the best I could do. For his build, it's the exact same as Caitlyn's, and he also is using the exact same rifle as her as well. So from now on, every time I mention leveling up, they will be getting the exact same things for levels, feats, and buffs like that. Now it was time for round 3. The Steel Watchers was the main threat in this fight. They had a lot of health and also did a lot of damage, but once you got their health low enough, they were able to self-destruct on the next turn, blowing up anyone near them. Now Gortash is also very dangerous as well, since once he gets to half health, he transforms into this giant form and has a floating hand that will almost kill you if you don't watch your health. I also had made a mistake in this fight. When I was trying to run away from him, I ran into a whole nother group of enemies and Steel Watchers. Now I didn't fully die, but Caitlyn did die with Step barely escaping. So I retreated back to camp, resurrected Caitlyn, and also leveled up to level 12. With level 12, I multi-classed into Mystic again for the Nomadic Arrow. Now with everyone back to full health, I returned to battle. So I first dealt with the extra enemies I ran into, then ended up dealing with Gortash after. With Gortash defeated, the only person left was Orin, so I went to the Tribunal chamber to kill all the people here to get the location of Orin. I first had to deal with the guards, then I entered and attacked Serevov. Once he was dealt with, I leveled up and multi-classed into Rogue. I then freed the flying elephant named Valeria, and then headed out to find Orin. Once I found the location of the temple, I had to first fight through multiple groups of enemies and ended up leveling up, putting my next level into Rogue, and for my feat I went for ability improvement. I then entered the main temple area, then started the Orin fight. Orin turned into her Slayer form at the beginning of this fight, and she also started this fight with 12 stacks of Unstoppable, which helped her not take damage from 12 attacks, but I'll let you see what happened for yourself in this fight. Since I switched builds, I was not only able to get rid of all of those stacks, but also kill her in one round. Now I don't think this is how you're supposed to fight her, but I just brute forced it and moved on to dealing with all of her minions. Now with Orin dealt with, we only have one boss fight left, the Netherbrain. While fighting through all the enemies on the way to the Netherbrain, I leveled up twice with both levels going into Rogue. For my subclass, I went with Thief for the extra bonus action, and for my feat, I went with Ability Improvement. Once we made it to the top of the Netherbrain, we dealt with all the enemies and the dragon. Now before we were able to attack the Netherbrain, the Emperor first had to open a portal into the brain, so we protected him while he was doing it. Caitlyn and the Emperor were the first one able to make it into the portal, bringing the Netherbrains down to half health. Once Stab made it into the portal, we had to wait around since the Netherbrain becomes immune to the damage type it was just hit with the round before. So after waiting around, Stab dealt the final blow and the Netherbrain was defeated. And there it is. Can you beat Baldur's Gate 3 as Caitlyn from Arcane? Yes you can. Let me know in the comments what you guys thought, and let me know if there are any other character specific runs I should do next. I already have some ideas, but let me know what you would like to see first. And yeah, thank you guys for watching. Make sure you guys like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next video. They don't know how to feel. Their minds crippled, mental game bangers. Never saw losers, but we game changers. Rearrange strangers with the Rick's next mission. Bring the light to your home, electrician. I've been grinding since the basement. If you know, you know, man, you not adjacent. I'm in a league of my own. My soul speaking through poems. Both your speakers are blown for my songs. Let's get it on. I'm ready for the